Hi, I'm Diana Watt, and I'm here to cover Survivor South Pacific, a recap. So, 2 immunity challenges, 2 tribal councils, and Redemption Island is growing its population very quickly. The show opens up covering the fallout from last week's tribal council. Ozzy is speaking to Cochran. He's very civil. Brandon comes up to try to protect him, but Ozzy's cool. Then up comes Jim. You're a coward. Don't ever speak to me again. Okay. Then it's Whitney's turn, and Whitney says, "So you're the vote, huh?" And he says, "Yeah, I was the vote." And she said, "You realize we saved you. We saved you. You disgust me." Okay, Jim and Whitney, you would have a better argument if you had not done the exact same thing to your tribe member and alliance member Elise just a few shows ago. If it's good for the goose, it's good for the gander. It's called outwit, outlast, outplay, and Cochran outplayed you. All this talk about he's a snake and he's a traitor. That tribe, they didn't bully him, but they had no use for him whatsoever until it came to the merge and they needed his number and they needed him to be a double agent. Then all of a sudden, they had a use for him. So I applaud Cochran's move. It was a strategic move, and when you are not Ozzy and you cannot win all the competitions, you play with other means, and that's what Cochran did. Okay, moving on. They have a first immunity challenge. The first immunity challenge is throw a coconut into a ring. The first 4 people who get the coconut in the ring advance. After that, they crack open a coconut, put the juice in their mouth, carry it through a maze, and spit it into a tall cylinder with a line at the top. I don't get Survivor's new thing with saliva and spitting food constantly, but it seems to be a theme this year. So, good for you guys, creative minds there. Dawn and Whitney advanced. Jim and Sophie advanced. But Dawn and Whitney aren't even a factor in the second half of this competition. It's between Jim and Sophie, and Jim is leading towards the end. Sophie has a chance to catch up with him, but she gags on the juice that's in her mouth and ends up spitting it out, and Jim wins immunity. Now the problem here is for Apulu, because in the morning they had talked about who to get out, and they thought about getting out Jim. That was their choice. Coach had a meeting with Ozzy and said, "Look, I don't want you to go. We're going to try to go a different route, but if you go, you'll be back because you'll win at Redemption Island." These two even hug at this meeting, so they have some Survivor veteran type friendship there. At the tribal council, Jim's bright idea that he tells Ozzy earlier is that he's going to give Ozzy his immunity necklace, and then he's going to give a speech about honor and integrity and people sticking together, and that the only person out of the 11 people there that didn't stick to his word was Cochran, and therefore everybody should vote him out. At which point Brandon goes, "Wait a minute. You all mocked us last time when we talked about honor and integrity, and you thought it was really funny because it was going to go to stones and someone was going to get screwed out of it, and when you had power, you didn't care about honor and integrity. Now you're going to preach to us about it?" So Jim's pretty clear that this is not going over well. So when Jeff asked him, "Are you going to keep your immunity necklace?" he says, "Yeah, I'm keeping it." Now, Ozzy earlier had said, if Jim says he's going to give me his immunity necklace, he'll give me his immunity necklace. So Ozzy's face was like when Jim decided to keep his immunity necklace. Of course, Ozzy gets voted out. Ozzy takes being voted off the island very well. This is the second time he's been all smiles and skipping off to Redemption Island this year. Get back to tribal, or get back to the camp, and Dawn has been sucking up big time. Here's my thing with Dawn. Last week, when it was her and Cochran that were going to be voted out, or she was on the low end, she felt bad for Cochran for the way that she hadn't stood up for him with his tribe. Right up until the second she won her immunity necklace. And then she pulled it back and said, oh no, we should stay loyal to our tribe. So now that she doesn't have immunity, it's, Coach, why don't you lay down in the shelter? Coach, do you need a pillow? Does anybody need this? Does anybody need that? She's oozing with niceness, and in her confessional she says, you know, if I have to flip, I have to flip. Well, isn't that what Cochran did? Okay, so next immunity challenge is standing on a slanted board that is wide at the top and gets narrow at the bottom, holding this arced thing that you put a ball on, and you balance the ball while you're standing on this beam. But the catch to this immunity challenge is that anybody who feels safe enough doesn't have to play in it, and they can go eat all the muffins, donuts, and iced coffee they want. The entire Upulu tribe plus Cochran decide they want to go eat. Now, Coach wants to play because that's in his nature. He wants to compete. He wants to do it, but he's going to do a unified thing with his tribe, so they all go over and eat. The only people playing are Dawn, Whitney, and Jim. Jim loses immediately. He is not happy at this. He's kicking things, and Jeff says, Jim, you won't win the immunity idol. I know, he says. He's a little pissed, sitting on the sideline seething. Now it's between Dawn and Whitney. And Dawn's getting encouragement from the Upulu tribe because she's well liked. Whitney makes little remarks during it. Dawn has a huge bauble during the competition and saves it. Now, how she saved it is beyond me, but she did. And Brandon's like, wow, that was amazing. And Whitney says, well, we can see who Brandon likes. So at one point, Dawn says to the Upulu tribe, I'm going to stay up here as long as I can so that you guys can eat for as long as you can. Because the minute the competition is over, the eating stops. Wow, that's nice of you, Dawn. Suck up. Okay, so in the end, Whitney wins the immunity idol. When they go to tribal this time, before they go to tribal, Albert is very suspicious of the whole Dawn sucking up and making inroads among the people of the tribe. Jim proposes to Albert and Sophie that they vote out Edna. Was it Edna? And then they can, you know, get stronger. He's talking about cults and things like that. Albert and Sophie don't buy his little argument for 1 second, but Albert doesn't trust Dawn because she's just too easily likable, and that he feels like people like Edna and Brandon, and when the numbers start getting down and they have to start eating each other, he feels like they might make a move to save Dawn in order to stick together. So he wants Dawn out. He approaches Sophie. She says, I don't think so. I think we're okay right now. He approaches Coach and Brandon, and in the end, they don't vote out Dawn. When they get to tribal council, Dawn's sitting there. Now, she's not being voted out, but boy, she put herself in jeopardy when Jeff asked her a question about the competition, and she says, well, I wish they would have played. And Brandon, again, says, wait a minute. During the competition, you told us to eat and that you would stay up there as long as you wanted so that we could eat because you felt it was one tribe. And so to feel like it's not one tribe and complain about us eating is, you know, uncool now here in tribal council. And she tries to backpedal and say, well, it's just a miscommunication. I didn't mean it that way. Whitney begins to cry during tribal council because she feels like she's been vilified because this tribe, Upulu, the people from Upulu are standing up for Cochran because he keeps getting blasted by the Survivor members, and she says, you know, I feel like I'm being vilified, like I'm I'm being called a bully, and because they're saying, look, you had no use for him, you didn't treat him well, and they didn't. They weren't They didn't bully him, but they had no use for him. And he knew from the minute he was on that tribe that he was on the outs, and they made it very clear to him he was on the outside. It wasn't until they needed him that they, wanted him. So anyhow, she's crying, she feels vilified, and in the end they vote out Jim anyhow. So Jim goes to to Redemption Island. Now Redemption Island has got Jim, Ozzy, and Keith, and boy, is it going to be one heck of a competition when it comes time to. There you have it, a recap of Survivor. The previews from next week show Albert. What would you call it? Albert is planning something, but they did the same thing last week. They showed Albert and Sophie planning with Jim and made more out of it than what it was. And when I mentioned it on Twitter today, I said something along the lines of Survivor was cool tonight, and it looks like Albert's freaking out a little bit. And I got a tweet from Survivor Albert that said, looks are deceiving. There you go, folks. Survivor. Let's see what happens next week.